Welcome to The Grow Down on Soil Health, the podcast where we dig deep into sustainable farming practices that can enhance your land and your bottom line. I'm your host, Dr. Ben West, Executive Director of Farmers for Soil Health, a program established by farmers for farmers dedicated to improving soil health practices such as planting cover crops to enhance the environment and profitability of farmers. This podcast is in partnership with the Soy Checkoff, the Pork Checkoff, and the National Corn Growers Association. Today's episode is all about family, wildlife, and conservation, how those threads weave together into a farm legacy that benefits both the land and the people who work it. Our guest has deep roots in Iowa farming, a professional career in wildlife and habitat restoration, and a strong passion for helping farmers adopt practices that make economic and environmental sense. Joining me today is Ryan Heiniger, a fourth-generation Iowa farmer and executive director of the Conservation Technology Information Center. With more than 25 years of experience, that's a long time, Ryan.
Getting old.
You don't look that old. 25 years of experience in the nonprofit conservation world, Ryan leads CTIC's efforts to build strong industry partnerships and advance sustainable agriculture. Ryan's got degrees in wildlife biology from Iowa State University, and today he and his wife Nikki are raising their son and daughter as proud fifth-generation farmers along the Mississippi River in southeast Iowa. So, Ryan, thanks for joining us here on the Grow Down, and we're here in Illinois for the 2025 Farm Progress Show. Man, it feels like fall outside.
I'm starting to think about harvest, and mornings like this certainly make it known that it's right around the corner. And thanks for having me, and thanks for this great weather.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to get up and almost want to put a jacket on first thing in the morning. It was almost that cool.
It was a hoodie type of morning.
And, in this time of year, it always makes me think about getting out in the woods and enjoying nature. And, Ryan, when you and I first met 2 or 3 years ago, we instantly connected. I'm a wildlife biologist, and I found out, you're a wildlife biologist. And there's not many folks from our background working in agriculture. So tell me a little bit more about your background. How did you get into wildlife? And how does that shape, what you do now?
Well, I've had an interesting career arc, but I have to give a lot of credit to spending a lot of days growing up on the farm. And it wasn't just about being with Dad or my grandfather in the tractor necessarily, but it was also what happens after the crop is in the bin, so to speak. And that love for wildlife came, I think, by just chasing a bird dog around those mornings in a duck blind, waiting for that 10-point buck to come out of the woods. And long story short, it was those type of experiences that made me want to pursue that for a career. I'm also a Gen X, kid of the 80s, so to speak, and so didn't really see a lot of opportunity to come back to the farm as a full-time endeavor. So I think those two things together just led me down a little bit different path, but also it's remarkable how sometimes things just take a little while to come full circle. So just last week was the 12-year mark of returning back to my roots.
Wow.
To raise our kids.
That's really neat. What an opportunity to be able to do that. And where you grew up, so you're talking about where you grew up, kind of influenced what you did as a kid and what you were interested in. Now, I was the same. I grew up right next to a national wildlife refuge that used agriculture a lot to manage for wildlife habitat. And I got really interested in that nexus of wildlife and agriculture. Most of my career has been spent kind of in that space. You grew up in Iowa, close to Burlington, which I know well because it's the home of Aldo Leopold, the father of wildlife management. How did growing up in that area with his reputation, was that something you were aware of as a kid?
Not while growing up. I would say there's been a movement more recently in the last 5 or 10 years to more strongly promote his roots. I'd love to have fun discussions, especially with folks from Wisconsin who, of course, love to claim him as their own, but not so much growing up. But then, of course, once you do get more exposure, you read the almanac. So as an adult, I certainly think about that almost daily in the sense of being able to walk in his footsteps and take inspiration from his writings and try to apply that both personally and professionally.
For folks listening may not know, we're talking about a guy, Aldo Leopold, one of the true icons in conservation in the early 20th century, who really is known as being the father for wildlife management, but really was just a very prominent, influential leader in conservation. Wrote a book called A Sand County Almanac. If listeners have never read that book, I encourage you to. It's a great,
Absolutely.
It's a masterpiece of conservation writing. One of my favorite Leopold quotes, anytime wildlife people get together, they toss out Leopold quotes, but it's very appropriate and very connected to Farmers for Soil Health. One of my favorite quotes of his was, he wrote one time, the oldest task in human history is to live on a piece of land without spoiling it. And in many ways, that's what we try and do with Farmers for Soil Health. Obviously, we have to feed, clothe, and shelter and power a growing planet. We're going to have to do it in ways that conserve and in sustainable ways our natural resources that all of that depends on. Do you have a favorite Leopold quote?
Yes, short answer. It's, of course, is a little bit of a challenge to narrow it down just to one, but I would say that the two spiritual dangers of not owning a farm comes to mind. Of course, that being one, that heat comes from a furnace, and two, that groceries come from the grocery store.
It's classic. That's in the forward to Sand County Almanac, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. Well, you're a wildlife biologist, went off to college, got a degree, worked in wildlife for a while, but you came back to the family farm. Talk about that. What was that decision like? What impact has it had on your life? And what's that like? Both running a significant conservation organization and living and working on a family farm.
So it kind of ties back to how we started the conversation about your impressions growing up, and it was in a duck blind with my father 15 years ago, just the two of us, watching the sun come up. Almost on the banks of the Mississippi River on the farm, and starting to have that conversation about what the future of our farm enterprise was going to be, with my sister and I both living away from our roots. And that put me on a different trajectory, and it without a doubt, not a coincidence, also had to do with my son just absolutely loving farming as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, being enamored by all things tractors, combines, and being 800 miles from our farm. And so that put me on a path to move home, to make sure that farm legacy could carry on. So it really did come full circle as a result of that conversation in a duck blind.
That's really cool. And one of the things I like, I'd love to dig into here, Ryan, you and I have talked about this some in the past, the conservation practices you've implemented on your farm, and you've gone whole hog. Like you try and do everything the best that you can in the conservation space on your farm. And that's led to better profits, better sustainability, but it's also led to a different quality of life for you and your family. Because when you have a farm that has wildlife habitat, it gives you recreational opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise. Talk about that a little bit. Well, how does the way you manage your farm, not just contributed to the sustainability of your farming operation, but to your and your family's quality of life?
So there's several different dynamics to pull on there. One is certainly just thinking about technology today that allows us to manage the farm, to analyze the farm's potential a little bit differently. And of course, what that can mean is looking at each acre as a separate business unit, and therefore what practices may maximize that profitability and that ROI using different approaches. And so, fundamentally for us, it's meant looking at those acres that sometimes are not profitable. And if you really want to drill into certain zones, it's acres that year over year are not profitable. And so then, of course, you start thinking, how can I manage those differently? Coupled with our passion for bird hunting, for deer hunting in particular, how these acres are still going to grow something. It may not be traditional bushels or commodities. And those acres then providing wildlife habitat and really extending the season for us as a family to enjoy each other's company and camaraderie and time in the outdoors.
Yeah. And I love, you're a real leader in leveraging technology to the ultimate degree it's what your organization does to a large degree to help make better farm decisions. And you're talking about acre by acre, but we're at the point now you can really manage almost by the square foot of fields. And so give listeners some practical examples of like, what does that mean? How on a particular field, how do you use those data to make better management decisions year to year?
So you're spot on that because the technology exists, that yes, a square foot is practical to be able to do so. But looking at other opportunities, it's really combining yield data from the combine. It's our crop budgets, what we're spending, and then ultimately, of course, what we're marketing that grain and what the profitability is. So from a functional unit, an acre still kind of makes sense to evaluate year over year profitability. And so it's honing in on those red acres, those zones that just don't produce enough profitability to cover, of course, today's pretty steep input prices, and how those could be repurposed to grow something different. So perhaps another option, we haven't done this yet. This is still on the want to pursue list, but we've been using cover crops since 2019. Some of these acres could be repurposed to grow a small grain. So we're vertically integrating our cover crop seed production as a potential mechanism to buy down the cost. So those zones, the sandy ridges in particular in the Mississippi River bottoms, it might burn up late summer. We're not getting August rain, so that corn, that soybean may burn up. It could still produce a heck of a crop of winter wheat, oats, or rye that then we can in turn use to lower the cost of our soil health practices.
And do you have acres you have completely converted to non-agricultural uses?
We have. And, one of the things that has been fascinating, a lot of times it's referred to as retirement, land retirement. I like to think of it as simply repurposing, recalibrating to its potential. It's growing something, and it's growing wildlife, it's growing clean water, it's pumping carbon back into the soil. But yes, we have done that in a number of areas. Along tree belts, another kind of dead giveaway competition for sun, water, ideally suited to do something else.
Yeah. Thinking about, your family's adoption of conservation practices, one of the things I've thought a lot about over the past few years is what motivates farmers to adopt new conservation practices. Some farmers are, fully on board. Some farmers are still skeptical, and for good reasons, because they've tried things in the past that didn't work. The science is emerging every year, and it's really clear that many of these practices are just good long-term practices, both for the financial and the environmental sustainability of farms and farming operations. But still, some farmers are hesitant to try it. And so it seems like there's some social science behind this. Have you thought much about, what have you learned in your experience? What are some of the variables that affect farmers' decisions of, hey, I'm going to try cover crops this year. I've never done it before. What's driving their decision making?
Well, this is one of those situations where I think it is hard to paint with a broad brush, right? Because every farmer has their own unique story. They're at their own place in their conservation adoption journey. In addition to, of course, the obvious, the economics have to be there, near term and long term. And again, the times that we're all managing through right now, economics are even more prolific in terms of a decision point.
Yes.
But I would submit that for every farmer, it really is about whether or not they've had that aha moment to ask them to kind of question the way that they're approaching their management. And for us, I'll tell you just personally, it was 2019. It was a devastating year across not only the Midwest, but the country for Prevent Plant. We had fields losing an unacceptable amount of soil. So that was, seeing soil in your road ditches. We can do better. We must do better. We've got to change some management practices.
Yeah, and I know in the past, certain practices, and cover crops are a really good example. One of the barriers that's been there in the past for farmers, and still is cover crop seed availability, and then just the time and the equipment to plant and manage cover crops. And I know you've recently started a business doing cover crop seeding, custom seeding. Tell us a little bit about that, because it does seem, I've talked to a lot of farmers who say, man, I'd love to try cover crops. I just don't have time in my farm operation to manage them. So I'd love to hear more about what you're doing.
So this actually stitches several things together, and back to barriers just quickly. Not having the time, the equipment, the expertise is a very easy and very understandable reason why there's just not enough time in the fall to try certain things. And so my son and I just very recently created a LLC, and we're actively recruiting for customers right now to help remove that barrier that we know exists in our community, in the 2 or 3 surrounding counties where there are not farmers doing custom cover crop seeding. So my son just yesterday, in fact, started his senior year of high school,
wow,
which was an amazing milestone to think about, especially as it relates to our move back to the farm some dozen years ago, how fast that went. But the kid just loves all things farming, wants to spend as much time in the tractor as possible. And so for us, this was a chance to combine a business opportunity. That'll be a great life lesson for him. It'll get him more time in the tractor this fall after our harvest and field work is done. And it'll remove that barrier that we know exists locally for others to adopt cover crops because they don't have the time, they don't have the equipment. So we're going to be able to offer this up now to farmers in Southeast Iowa.
One of the real foundations of Farmers for Soil Health is we wanted to identify and remove barriers for farmers incorporating practices, in this case cover crops, one, through providing them financial incentive to help mitigate the financial risk of a new practice. 2, by providing them technical assistance so that they can get information about how to do it better. And 3, making it really easy to enroll. And, removing barriers is so important. Largely, that's what CTIC does. Your organization removes barriers to conservation, one of those being information. Just having good information about all the programs that are out there is so complex. So it's a significant barrier for farmers trying some of these programs and practices. But you all have started a new thing called the Conservation Connector. When you first told me about it, I was really excited about it, thinking it could be a real big solution to that problem across the country. Tell us a little bit about your Conservation Connector.
So CTIC for 4 decades plus has been a champion for conservation agriculture, working across industry. A lot of the companies that are here in Decatur this week have been with us for decades. And so it's really a testament to the industry wanting to help promote better conservation. And so we're excited to kind of come home to officially unveil our Conservation Connector here this week, which stems to be a central clearinghouse for farmers to more easily find what technical and financial resources are available to them. Of course, we live by our phones today, so folks can go to connector.ag, search by their geography, search by their crop. Maybe they're on a specific mission to just find cover crop cost share. It doesn't matter. It's a big tent of opportunities that we're showcasing with the Conservation Connector. So people can make a listing of their program, whether you're a company, whether you're a CCA that offers agronomy advice to a farmer, you can put an ad into the connector, and of course allowing farmers and their other advisors to more easily discern what is available. And so, the backdrop here is today, we're fortunate. Programs like Farmers for Soil Health, which we're very proud to be a part of in South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin as part of the 20-state project. Farmers have great access to new service providers, new forms of cost share that they did not have 5 and 10 years ago. The downside is that they have almost an unlimited amount of options. And so at times it can be a little confusing. It can be a little chaotic. Different programs have different eligibility requirements, different sign-up deadlines. How do you make sense of it at your fingertips? And so that's the goal that we have for the connector.
It's been a huge need for a long time. I know it's new. It's already a great resource. I know it will get better over time. Give everyone the web address again for people to.
The website is connector.ag. Folks can check it out. It is live officially this week here in Decatur.
Everyone should check that out. It's a great platform, a great resource for farmers, landowners of all kinds. Ryan, really appreciate you joining. I've really been looking forward to this interview. Being able to have the passion for conservation that you have, to act that out both in your professional capacity, leading CTIC, but also as a farmer yourself, and putting the practices that you're educating people about on the ground on your own farm. Just a really cool story. Really appreciate you joining.
Well, as they say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I feel privileged to be able to have that opportunity. And I want to invite you to come by the farm sometime.
Maybe during pheasant season.
Maybe during pheasant season. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, thanks for joining. Well, everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and check out our website, farmersforsoilhealth.com, where you can find out more about our program and about how you can get involved. Stay tuned for more insights on sustainable farming practices. Until next time.